Now we'll get into Xai, which is closely related to Xai, also being subjective discernment. It comes from a concept. It knows itself, power of Xai, as a concept of harmony. And similar to Xai, when you understand harmony, you must understand really three things. Obviously, harmony. But once you have the concept, the spirit form of harmony, it implies the spirit form of disharmony. Does that make sense? And if you have harmony and disharmony, you have a way of balancing, telling which one is which. And so both the discern powers, they do that. There are desired states, perfection, in this case harmony, which means there is an undesired state, and then knowing which is which. And that's very important because as a right brain discernment power, it's in the moment. Harmony keeps changing for an individual. What may be harmonious one second is not harmonious the next, similar to perfection. That shifts as the situation unfolds. Okay, so we'll describe harmony as a concept as the absence of discord. And this is a state that can never be totally reached, but it can get as close as possible, and that is what harmony is. Harmony is the absence of discord, which is a, does that make sense? It's a concept. It's a form of perfection, as perfection is a form of harmony, which means they're concepts like infinity. So the psyche can strive for them, but they must be constantly strived for. This is important. If the psyche takes its pulse off of harmony, it will start to move away from it. Other forces will take away from that desired state. And it's the job of Xai to note immediately when that has happened. Similar to Xai, which is, I often put more like a mission context. But Xai has a similar quality of purity, of being able to see things from the right position. In this case, the right position is a hopeful one. That's the first part of their power flow. And that's because hope is what brings one to harmony. If you don't come with hope, it is you yourself that actually started the discord. Does that make sense? That's why it's the first part. It relates to the clarity of the Xai. That keeps it clear. Harmony is very much concerned, I think, often with like toxic. What's toxic? So hope is the pure state of which you are yourself free of toxins that would harm harmony. You are hopeful for harmony. All you are doing is striving for the harmony. That kind of burns out in a way any other lesser, lower kind of thoughts. Does that make sense? Okay. And this relates to Xai, which was weak, strong, and knowing the difference. Here it's going to be, I say, right, wrong, and knowing the difference. With hope, hope has a very pure quality in that it is almost devoid of toxicity. Does that make sense? You can almost think of hope in that way, is the absence of doubt, the absence of those things that bring you down. So in this way, it is these first three of the power flow are constant qualities, and that is the absence of the negative. The next part of the power flow is then the positive, which would be idealism. With idealism, that is a reaching out for the best qualities in yourself and in others and in a situation. Idealism relates to precision that way, in that hope is sort of like your innate state without motion, but then when you start to actually move forward, how do you maintain that hopeful position although you're moving away from harmony? Does that make sense? So how do you move away? Idealism. Idealism is how you stay on target even though you are now moving. Because the Xai is going to be moved by things, by perceptions and other things. They'll have to decide how to be moved. If it moves, if it comes from a position of idealism, then it is set. It is set to see the best. If it comes with harmony, it is set to be immune to the worst. Hope makes it immune to the worst. Idealism makes it like a call. It calls to the good. So idealism calls to the good, and the hope keeps out the negative. Then, third part of the power flow is again virtue. Knowing the difference. Knowing how to be idealistic. Because it can change. And this actually again relates to the customizing feature of the third element for Xai, is that as it is an adaptive power, what is the right thing to do changes. To be correctly idealistic in one situation changes as the parameters change, the dynamics change, the situation unfolds. Virtue is again like a balancing tool. It's a kind of shock absorber suspension system to allow you to maintain idealism and hope as the situation changes. So virtue keeps, that's kind of dividing line, letting you know how to stay with those two things as everything else changes. And that gives it a very constant quality, but you can see that it's adaptive. Constant, but adaptive. Again, relating with the Xai, it wants harmony for the psyche. It is a desired state, and stepping away from it is something that needs to be notified immediately and gotten back to as quickly as possible. That's what it feels. So it advocates for hope, idealism, virtue. If the psyche responds and says, okay, you raise your hand and it addresses it, what will Xai get if the psyche pays attention to it? It will want to start to detecting for any discord. How does it do this? We use the analogy I think works very well of the castle, like the compass castle for the Xai, in which case the tower feels a vibration as things come to it. And you can almost have like a centurion, a guardian at the gate there who feels the world's vibrations to it. And this is that gut reaction we talk about that Xai is so good at. It feels stimulus coming in, and it like clinches in a certain way, a very nuanced way, depending on the kind of impact it's receiving. This can be extended, and this follows in both this trio and the next trio, is it can come from the tower, go out in a reaching fashion, and then it can go completely across to a third party. So, in the detection phase, with gut reaction, if there is discord in the environment and it's coming in at such a way that the tower can feel it, the individual can feel it, there will be an instant gut reaction for the individual. But you can almost have a gut reaction the best way to say it is, this is at this point is kind of one way, in that you are getting a gut reaction based on stimulus, but where the stimulus is coming from, what generated it, you do not have a connection with. You do with the next power flow, and that's essence reading. A bridge is created from the tower to something else. Good or bad, it makes contact. When this happens, you're kind of getting a gut reaction, but as you do, you can touch the Xai in them a bit and see what is generating, what is causing this impact on you. And so that is a extended kind. And it's important. The initial gut reaction is equally important because that's how simply it's affecting you. But With the essence reading, it gives a bit of a why. Why is that happening? And that can actually increase the understanding of how you look at it is based on that person's Xai position. Doesn't mean you agree with it. Essence reading can also be used to call out a villain. Because you get impacted by something, you're like, I feel kind of bad. That's gut reaction. Should I feel bad? That's essence reading where you're like, yeah, that's not an accident. Does that make sense? Because the initial gut reaction is just impingement, but impingement could come from an accident, accidental impingement. Or it could be, oh, I feel good. But that's just incidental feeling good. The person wasn't trying to be a hero or trying to be a villain. With essence reading, you can really see, okay, their Xai was in this position when they sent that out. That gives a lot of interpreting exactly what's going on and understanding the other person. But you're still coming from your point of view. You have a third way of doing it, which is you not just come across and touch the bridge. You actually send an envoy over into the third party. And this is what we call empathy. Where you go into their Xai camp and live in their skin, so to speak, understand what it's like for their Xai. Your Xai feels what their Xai feels. This can be used to really bond and feel the joy of a pleasant thing. It can also be used to heal a great deal, where you go over into another person and they have a deranged mind. And this is scary, but your kind is very powerful and brave this way, is going over into their camp, into their Xai for enough amount of time to understand how they're wounded. Does that make sense? In order that they can be helped. But also in experiencing the joys of the growth of other people and things like that. So, yes?
I had a question. So, for ones that don't have Xai in their conscious powers, is it that I'm going into the Xai, for example, with everyone to, in order to heal or triage somebody, or is there more than just going to the Xai of someone?
Well, you go into their whole psyche, but what allows you to get into their core is the fact that you are going into their Xai, which is an extremely protected zone. So getting into the Xai zone is a very difficult one for people because it's kind of like, it's very personal, it's very wild. Even people who have it high in their psyche, it's still extremely personal and extremely wild. So that's a really great way to instantly get to feel someone's energy, is to go to that area, because it's often an area they themselves, it's so wild and rawish that they can't really know themselves. So if you actually can do it, you can oftentimes know them a bit better than they know themselves. What else? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. We'll continue the analogy of the tower, the bridge across, and then actually going sort of like a Xai ambassador over to them. With that first trio, it was sort of like detection, but for you it's more, I would say, connecting. And it starts with simply communication. The gut reaction is communication coming in that is hitting the tower. Essence reading is communication between your Xai and their Xai, and trying to get an understanding of where they're generating things from. And then empathy is actually going over and sort of visiting with them for a while. Does that make sense? So it's an issue of consciousness. Does it make sense? Now we're going to go from consciousness to a term I'll call deep resources. I mentioned this the other day. The Xai and Vi are responsible, it's why they go on defense, and they have a very special sacred job as being the main defensive powers of the psyche. And that is, well, Z and G are also have very strong defensive powers, but it's proactive out in front. This is like last defense. This is like the line. It doesn't get passed. And for this reason, there is super important resources, and I use the word sacred with you, and one thing my spirit form is like is for Xai, I'll use vital. There are vital psychic resources, sacred psychic resources, that the subjective certain powers they hold on to. And that is not to be gone out unless it is absolutely an emergency, or absolutely the smartest, bestest play ever. And and they hold those. Going with Xai now, once the parlay has happened, so to speak, where the tower was resonated, the tower was verse 1? Gut reaction, vibrated. The tower was vibrated by stimulus. That's a form of communication, but there's been no change of resource of the psyche yet. There's the possibility of it, and that's why the vibration, then the bridge being made, then the empathy is to see if vital, or in this case, sacred resources need to come forward, need to come out from the psyche. That's kind of like their sacred charge. In Xai's case, it is their vital charge. Hence the big not dying motif of Xai. Is the first thing that will happen is resonating slash investing is the tower is basically sitting over like a well. This well acts as sort of like the thing that they try to keep pure and at equilibrium. It also is on top of a massive fount underneath of it. This is a sacred fount. These forces are like unbelievably wild and powerful. They are your vital core, your sacred core resources. So they have to be, there's a lot like the submarine commander or the nuclear bomb, there has to be a lot of checks to make sure when that thing gets released that it's proper to do so. So the first thing that will happen is resonating investment. The tower, again being vibrated, is going to decide, I think sacred resources may be needed here. I think that's what's happening. What will happen is the tower will swell. It could swell from perceptions coming in through V and Ni, saying that I think there may be things in the wind that we may need to give resources for. Or it can be from the tower itself vibrating like a dividing rod, thinking that I think this is our moment. So it's a dual way thing, but either way, the tower will begin to stockpile sacred resources like a submarine loading. Remember that power thing that we talked about, the subjective sermon and objective sermon? That you really see it on display here as the tower basically gets geared up. And when it does that, it doesn't like to move normally, but it's going to move now. It is going to expand its walls, which it doesn't like to do because it don't want to do anything coming off harmony. So it's very leery to do that, just like Xai is for perfection. Expanding the walls of the tower is like, whoa, there's going to be a really important reason for that. There's no fluff in the towers. The towers have nothing in them except purity. So why would you swell it? I think we're going to need more stuff. We're going to need more sacred resources. So it swells in order to start stockpiling for the potential, this is important to note, the potential struggle to come. Xai and Xai are defensive. They're designed to anticipate struggle and what will be needed to overcome it and get through it. They're survivors. Xai and Xai, they're about survival. The next stage is, again, the bridge going out. The resources have been funneled up, surging up through that pool. And it is true. There does need to be a outflow of sacred resources. It is worthy. That's a big thing, both for Xai and Xai, is it worthy? Is this the right play to be doing now? But if it is, there's a moment in time where you give resources that are going to be extremely difficult to pay back. Extremely difficult to recoup. But if you're right and you win, the payback, there ain't nothing like it. So it's very much holding on to your nitro. Xai and Xai are holding on to those vital life forces you have that keep you going no matter what. Hence, hope keeps you going no matter what. Xai, you see them, they're like machines, it keeps you going. Those powers will keep you going. So, it's now decided that in order to keep going properly, energy needs to be sent out to something else. Something is worthy of giving those vital resources, those sacred resources. And the, was it conviction slash, there's investment, conviction. Anyway, it's the one where you actually now are going to give those energies to a cause. A cause is that important. For the Xai, it is because in order to maintain harmony, that is a thing. More sacred resources are needed to go forward. And as it's sent out, it's sort of like, we're like ambassadors. Connections to the world start being made. Some of those connections are so important, perhaps the cause is so great, the need to keep, because as you connect, disharmony in the world will affect your harmony. That's the higher, nobler part of Xai, is that as it goes, my harmony, our harmony, their harmony, our harmony, my harmony, that's what it keeps doing. It spans the whole scope of harmony. And then when disharmony happens outside, there can be a need to come to its aid. And that's where the conviction and the investment comes in on, I think, the 8th power flow. The number 9 is Xai is very leery of committing. Does that make sense? As the objective discernment powers are eager to make that foot forward, the subjective discernments are leery of doing that. But their highest calling is to put it forward. It's like all in. The resources that Xai and Xai have are all in of the psyche, and that's why they're so fiercely protective of them being released. However, sometimes it's correct. And this comes on the 9th part of the power flow for Xai, which is devotion/sacrifice. The tower, it sends over envoys of its sacred energy. It could decide that a certain cause, in order to maintain that, it's worthy to maintain a permanent bridge. Permanently, you allow energy, your sacred energy, to come out, flow out from you and to another. It's worthy. When that happens, that's the devotion that Xai is known for, and it actually makes Xai stronger. If it is a worthy branch, it's not excess energy or extra energy that is weakening you, it's the opposite. If it's worthy, you get fed, and the trunk of like the Xai tree that's flowing up actually gets stronger. If the connections are bad, then it makes the trunk wither and shrink. So it is very important that Xai get it right, that Xai get it right. But if they do, the connections are the bee's knees. If necessary, both Xai and Xai can take their tower completely over. With Xai, it is often the complete committal of a 49-51 call where you're going to sacrifice all your life force energy to pull something off, because only by gambling at all do you have a chance to live. Does that make sense? Xai will do those things. We're like, classic Gattaca, I'm just going to swim out until that's it, because that's the way to win. It's the only way to win. Xai has that with its noble altruistic causes, where it feels this is harmony for all times. This is like harmony for all the cosmos. What I do right now is beyond just my harmony. It's all harmony. Whew, goosebump times. When that happens, it may require again that the tower get up and go over, and I'm get choked over, but sacrifice. And again, putting yourself out possibly as a martyr, because it's the only way to win. And those are the all-in calls that Xai and Xai make, and they're very impressive that way. So that is the power flow 1 through 9. Does that make sense so far? The concept qualities, then sort of like the awareness, gut reaction, essence reading, and then from awareness to internalizing, processing, the actual allowing the sacred resources to flow. First, building up with resonating, then going out with conviction and investment, and then actually, if necessary, establishing permanent bridges. We permanently flow energy to people, but that actually builds you. It doesn't weaken you. It actually makes you stronger if they're deserving. And necessary, you'll actually take your whole tower over and put it on the line. You'll take your tower and actually put it here. It's actually the most powerful moves in the game, is to do that. And if it's worthy, it is correct to do so. Mega hero time. To put it all under one banner, so people can have something to hold on to, would be the 10th one, would be moral compass / personal values. All of that is happening 24/7. It helps to keep the psyche as close to harmony as possible as all these things are going on. That's basically what all those 9 things are doing. As stimulus is coming in, different things happen, change in life, and particularly stress. And stress can be happy stress, like healing. Healing can be happy or bad. It's just energy. And so Xai gets stimulated whenever that happens and keeps the person on harmony. And if as you get the stimulus and stresses of life coming in and you keep on harmony, that's your moral compass. And that's a good moral compass. That's basically what it does. As you come in staying, trying to do harmony despite all these shifts that are going around. All these shifts are throwing, but you keep trying to come back to harmony, back to harmony. That is the noblest way of trying to best practice, and thus makes an excellent moral compass. That's the way it's done. Now to finish up is the distinct signal. As mentioned, Xai has a distinct symbol seen unflappable. With Xai, it is often deep sorrow. And what that comes from is the pain of stepping away from harmony. Because harmony is just like the most beautiful thing ever. Similar to Xai in a way, which has like sort of like a logical beauty. There is a deep emotional beauty to harmony, to hope. And when you are experiencing the rest of the psyche, and therefore the rest of the mojos, and then therefore the rest of the world and the means it's created, they're not concerned with harmony. So for those who actually have Xai, and the higher up in the psyche it is, the more pronounced it is, Xai is constantly being hit by the aspects of the world that are not harmonious, and therefore must span that gulf. And for that reason, it's important to understand this, is that deep sorrow is a very powerful driver, as I mentioned before, for art and for other things, and causes is the sorrow causes a deep need to make the sorrow go away. So you have the beautiful hope, the harmony, all that kind of stuff, and then as you start being bombarded by the world, there's all this disharmony. And that's so sad, because as soon as you step away from that tower, the second you step away from the tower, even in your own psyche, there is disharmony. And thus the sadness is there. But then the effort exerted to return to harmony is superhuman. So the deep sorrow makes it to where even though harmony seems so far away, it will make that walk. The deep sorrow makes energy. And that's important to understand is all the pod powers at their base form are very raw. And a lot of things people give negative connotations to just because it's raw, like mind's rage. In a raw state, it can throw people, and the manifestations it can take can throw people. But that doesn't mean that's the way it's intended, and that deep sorrow at a base form comes from an extremely noble place. Like the rage does. It comes from, you were coming from a place of purity, and now you walk out the door and starting your engagement with the rest of the psyche of the world, they are lessening that. And so there must be an effort exerted that's not acceptable to be lessened that way. And that's what sorrow does, because if you didn't have the sorrow, you would forget. The psyche would forget that they've moved away from this harmony. There must be a very acute feeling that makes sure when harmony has been moved away from, it is known, and it's known, it can't be ignored.